The B-58 Hustler was to be America's next generation of bomber aircraft, but Convair saw well beyond the military applications and was very excited to propose that its little B-58 supersonic bomber would be the gateway to civil operations, essentially become the American Concorde well before those dastardly Europeans. Convair knew that this task was daunting and that they needed to slowly approach the military and ease them into the idea of civilians flying at Mach 2.0. This video was based on an excellent book by Scott Lothar, and I recommend you go to his site Aerospace Projects Review to see the many more crazy aircraft designs just like this, and trust me, you will spend all day looking. Let's break the sound barrier with Convair's Supersonic Dream. Convair would propose a three-stage plan. The first was to simulate SST operations over a random American city to see how the impact of sonic booms would affect the population. The second was to modify an existing B-58 to carry passengers in a pod underneath, and the third was to build a prototype civil version of the Hustler called the B-58-9. This first stage of the program was the easiest and the quickest to approve by the military. By using a combined fleet of B-58s, F-104s, 101s, and 106s, the US Air Force flew around 1,200 missions over Oklahoma City, consistently reaching supersonic speeds. They would then monitor the amount of complaints, which came in at around 3% of the population. Next, Phase 2. Convair would need to test the public to flying supersonic transport. You see, until this point, only the military had actually ridden in a supersonic aircraft, and during these flights, they would be so involved in flying the plane or other operations that they wouldn't even notice the massive increase in G-forces. The average Harry and Jane, on the other hand, had barely even been up in the sky on an aeroplane, and thus Convair had no real thought how to test the average passenger and see how that they would react to flying double the speed of sound. So Convair proposed a people pod, removing the fuel pod and the nuke from the B-58 and replacing it with a pressurized container that could carry up to 5 passengers. These passengers would be encouraged to read books, listen to their favorite music, and even take naps just to see how comfortable it would be to fly at those speeds. The passengers would be in a single row of 5 seats with air conditioning and small windows, with the rear of the pod containing the testing equipment. All of this replaced the fuel pod, so the B-58 could only fly for around 30 minutes of supersonic speeds, but that was perfect enough for a test, and the perfect time for a nap. But it's the third stage of Convair's plan that really kicks it up a notch. The third phase of Convair's SST plan was to construct up to 12 supersonic transports. Dubbed the Convair Model 62 or the B-58-9, it would use the B-58 Hustler as its base, but would be built differently for more efficient supersonic travel. It would have the same 4 engines, but they would be positioned differently, with the outboard ones moved from below the wing to the actual wingtips. Talk about wingtip vortices. Its long, slim fuselage would easily hold 52 passengers in a 1-1 configuration and have a crew in side-by-side positions. Although Convair also suggested that they could slightly expand the cabin to either have 1-2 seating or even 2x2 seating, easily doubling the capacity. And it's this little bit of trivia that absolutely makes me laugh how Convair was thinking about the money. The seat specifically would be from the, air quotes, highly successful Convair 880-600. This jet would also be able to cruise at Mach 2.4 for 2,525 nautical miles. It's a little bit shy of New York to London, but the jet could easily land in Ireland or Greenland to refuel and then keep going, still easily arriving hours before a typical commercial aircraft. The first of these 4 jets would start flight testing by 1963 with Convair, with the other models being handed out to the FAA, NASA, and the US Air Force for operational shakedowns. In this 18-month test period, they would fly around the world in and out of airports at various altitudes, temperatures, and humidities to test not only how well the aircraft performed, but also to see what other issues occurred at airports and what economical factors need to be considered for actual commercial operations. Plus, it would give all the locals in these whimsical localities real-life experience with dealing with supersonic transports before later expected arrival of commercial fleets in the 1970s. But these locals never even saw the arrival of a single Convair SST. What happened? Well, it turns out that Washington saw one major flaw. Now, the Convair 58-9 was a cool-looking aircraft, and it looked like it could do the numbers, but for the US military, funding it didn't make any sense. While Phase 1 was carried out with multiple aircraft flying over Oklahoma City, around 3% of the population did actually hear the supersonic booms and complain to the government. This was sufficient for the government to be turned off SST travel thanks to these booms. But that wasn't the final blow. It actually came from initial work done by competitors Boeing and Lockheed. At this point, the ambition of supersonic travel heated up, and the government was being tempted by newer and flashier designs like the Boeing 2707 or its Lockheed counterpart, the L2000, that could carry more passengers and go even further. Why would they bother developing a derivative of a bomber, which, by the way, was costing an incredible amount of money at the time, something that you can hear all about in our B-58 video that's still on the channel. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and we'll get to the competition with Boeing and Lockheed in a moment. As for the Convair 58-9, it died on the drawing board, a dream of supersonic flight that was almost within reach. But Convair wasn't done yet, and they had one more trick up their sleeve. Not to be disappointed with the news of their beloved 58-9, they realized that they could come up with a special supersonic transport version that would use some of the new technology being developed for the upcoming SR-71 program. The hybrid would be shorter in length, but thicker with 2 Cs. It would also see the return of the pod like on the B-58. God, Convair really loves their pods, don't they? This new version would be called the RC-80 and would be used as a recon plane or a carrier of high-value cargo, limited number of special passengers or diplomats. This recon variant would be packed full of cameras and sensors and would be used for a special role. It wouldn't fly as fast as the SR-71 or as high as the U-2, but rather be used as a border patrol aircraft. It would fly along an area of interest and look sideways, using a vast array of windows to peer safely into enemy territory. And while that may sound a bit like a flaw, its design did have several advantages over the SR-71. For one, it could fly a lot longer at Mach 2.4 than the high-speed Blackbird, thanks to its vast fuel tanks. It would also have many more crew members who could work in comfort for longer times, or even work in shifts thanks to in-flight refueling. There was also a cargo version that was a little bit longer, and its use case mirrored the SST designs for mass quick transport of around 30 individuals and cargo, something that was very useful for US military operations. With feedback from the US government, Convair would take this initial design and turn it into the QRC-182. This version embraced its spy role much further and had more room for more sensors, but at the cost of passenger operations. It would have a side cargo door, the famous B-58 pod with fuel and sensors, and plenty of room for working crew on board. It could also fly for longer as well. There was also a rear-aft equipment bay by its tail. It would have been connected by a small bridge past the fuel tanks in the middle and allowed this little area to be used for crew or resting. Because of the choice to have a mid-fuselage fuel tanks, the concept no longer really suited transportation of passengers, but you bet with some rework it might have been a real little treat. Although some designs have this area listed as baggage, it could still carry around 30 passengers on board. Now, whilst this is all going on, the US government also started the American Concorde program, and Convair wasn't going to be caught empty-handed like they were before. They said if Boeing and Lockheed were going to be designing actual aircraft, then they should get a chance too. And this is what they came up with. Convair was feeling pretty confident by the early 1960s. They had so far designed multiple SST passenger planes with the B-58-9, the RC-80, and the QRC-182. What if they could break from tradition and then actually design a passenger SST from the ground up instead of basing it on a bomber? In May 1960, Convair revealed their SST, simply called the Convair Mac III SST. As the name would have it, it would also fly at Mach 3 thanks to 6 non-afterburning turbojets, just like the XB-70, which ironically was also proposed to be refitted into a passenger plane, and it's a video that we have right now on the channel. Gosh, aren't you lucky if you're a first-time viewer? So this Convair SST could carry 135 passengers in a 3-2 configuration to a range of around 4,000 nautical miles, with a prototype expected to fly by 1967 and service to begin in 1970 with 145 aircraft at a cool $14.1 million each, just in time for the new supersonic decade. Wow. Talk about ambitious. Alas, Convair wasn't as successful as Lockheed or Boeing in the program. Whilst I've gone into massive detail before in this program on the channel, it was due to the other designs just being more cool. The Boeing concept was dreamed at such an over-the-top aircraft with folding wings that it won the initial support from the government and beat Convair. And that's really it. It was quite the rapid end to the Convair passenger dreams on that cold winter of 1963, but the combined opposition to supersonic booms and the lack of government funding not only ended Convair's aspirations, but supersonic died as well.
Actually, future Nick here, Convair did propose to build a hypersonic project that would have been a lot longer and a lot more bigger, but it's definitely something that we can do in another video.
And I, for one, am quite upset, to be honest. I feel like that Convair was really close to some of these designs, and had the B-58 program not massively exceeded costs, it would have potentially developed a civil version. And speaking to Scott Lawther of Aerospace Projects Review, who helped with the research of this video today, he had this to say. The military variants would be operational, but the civilian versions would be just to check out the technology and the operations. The US Air Force might have been able to absorb the expense of a passenger cargo transport version of the B-58, but not a chance in hell that a commercial airline would have been built. Only those with no burning desire for profit motive, married with deep pockets, would have flown such a vehicle. Pure NASA versions of the B-58-9 also make sense painted white and fastened with sensors, test panels of new materials or manufacturing techniques, experimental engines on 1 or 2 pylons, perhaps even a small launch vehicles or air-breathing parasite test vehicles onto the center line. Perhaps some exorbitantly rich types might have had their own B-58-9 after it had served its testing purpose. Howard Hughes, the Shah, and oil sheiks. This is a world that was never born, and I honestly feel a little bit sad at the end of these videos when I have to deliver this very obviously bad news. Let me know in the comments what you think and what you want to see on the next Found and Explained video.
When I say American Concorde, you think of the Boeing 2707. But another design almost won the government contract, the Lockheed L2000. It was cheaper and easier to build, and had it been put into production, it's possible it would have made it to the market and still be flying today. Let's explore what the world of the L2000 would have been like. Thanks so much for joining this video today. If you've seen a few of my videos already, then it's time to subscribe. Only 8% of my viewers actually subscribe, so let's get that over 10% and that would be grand. Let's go! In 1961, in retaliation to the Concorde and the Soviet endeavor to build a supersonic transport, President Kennedy authorized a contest to build an American equivalent. The prize would be 75% subsidizing the cost of research and production of the aircraft, but there would be an important condition attached. Whatever design proposed would be significantly more technologically advanced over the Concorde, have to carry at least 250 passengers, double that of the Concorde, and fly faster and further than the European counterpart. Essentially, the US wanted a Concorde killer that would have dominated the 500 SST market and cemented the American dominance in airspace for decades to come. North American Aviation, Boeing and Lockheed answered the call, with only the latter two making it through to the final round. While the Boeing 2707 has been well covered by many on this platform, including myself where you can see right here, the Lockheed L2000 has fallen into history as a major could have been. Let's explore the design. Lockheed had been working on an SST design since 1958, before the contest, and with a creation that could fly at cruise speeds of around 2,000 miles per hour, or 3,200 kilometers per hour, with takeoff and landing speeds just like a normal plane to avoid the noise landing problem. This plane design originally had straight wings like the F-104 Starfighter, but during wind tunnel tests, it ended up causing issues with drag and the plane's center of pressure when going supersonic. The next stage was to change the aircraft's design into a delta shape, but then this came at a crunch when it came to the aircraft's landing and takeoff. Lockheed considered a swing wing like the Boeing 2707 design, but they believed that the joint mechanism would be too heavy, which we now know that Boeing ultimately abandoned it for the same reason. The plane would also need canards for the front to control the plane as it flew subsonically. By 1963, and 5 years of research, Lockheed had shifted the leading edge of the wing forward, removing the canards and moving the engines from within the plane to under the wing, resembling the final design that would be pitched to the contest. This final design was called the L2000-1 and was 223 feet or 70 meters long and had a narrow body fuselage of only 132 inches wide or 335 centimeters. This would mean that the passengers would have to sit in a 2-3 configuration in economy or a 2-2 in first class, for a total of 170 passengers or up to 200 if all economy. To help reduce the production time and cost, Lockheed looked to its other projects for engines, and it had the perfect one. The Pratt & Whitney J58, famously used on the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, could be slung under the wing and provide the supersonic thrusts that the plane design required. Being a turbofan design as opposed to a turbojet, it would require no afterburner to get into the sky and would be significantly quieter. Speaking of noise, the plane would also try to tackle the problem of sonic booms. The L2000-1 would break the barrier at 42,000 feet, 12,800 meters altitude, rather than 30,000 feet or 9,100 meters, making a less noticeable sonic boom noise on the ground. The plane would then climb up to a shockingly high cruising altitude of 76.5 thousand feet or 23.3 thousand meters at Mach 3.0 for the journey. This would make it perfect for a domestic route of New York to Miami over the ocean or competing against the Concorde to Europe. By 1964, there were two major changes. The US government changed the requirements to improve performance, and engine manufacturers Pratt & Whitney and General Electric, who were doing their own contest for the engine at the same time for an SST, had designed more powerful supersonic engines. As Lockheed didn't know who would actually win the contest for the engine, the L-2000-2, as it was called, would need engine pods that could fit either design. The silver lining was that these new powerful engines allowed supersonic penetration to occur as late as 45,000 feet, 13.7 meters above sea level for the L2000, meaning an even quieter boom. Lockheed was ready to pitch the aircraft against rival Boeing. Submitting a new supersonic transport concept is risky, and Lockheed decided to bring two to the meeting. The first was the L-2000-7A. It was longer than the initial designs and can carry up to 230 passengers. Lockheed also had a bigger version called the L-2000-7B that could be used domestically over land and could carry up to 273 domestic passengers and plenty of cargo at nearly 300 feet long. With the hard work done, Lockheed sat back and crossed their fingers. Unfortunately, it seems that the selection committee had other ideas, and on December 31st, 1966, chose the Boeing 2707 moving forward. And it seems that compared to the Boeing 2707, the Lockheed design was deemed too simple and too close to the Concorde, with high fuel burning and loud on takeoff and landing. The Boeing 2707 was such an imaginary leap forward with technology that the Lockheed plane was deemed too safe. But here's the thing, the Lockheed design with all its flaws were much simpler and cheaper and easier to build. Unlike the Boeing 2707, which used titanium throughout, the L-2000 used a much easier to produce and cheaper stainless steel, and restricted titanium use to only specific areas where it offered a clear advantage over stainless steel. As we know now, Boeing would actually abandon many of the advanced features that had made them a winner and even go back to what worked, the Lockheed Delta Wing design. If Lockheed had won the contest instead of Boeing, perhaps they would have been able to make a series of prototypes, or even better, a production model for an airline like Delta by the time Congress was considering pulling funding in 1971. And perhaps I could even say that with an aircraft flying and orders being delivered, those minds in Washington would have not been so eager to close the program, and we would have seen funding well to the oil crisis of 1973, enough to make a substantial impact on the world of aviation. Thanks so much for watching this video today. It would not be possible without my Patreons and those who have supported me for the last year. I can't wait to show you the many more designs that I have cooked up, and by the time you're watching this, I should have about 6 more never-built crazy concepts well on the way to meet you. So if you haven't already, it's time to subscribe and check out more in the world of never built. One of the biggest problems facing supersonic aircraft today is the problem of sonic booms. Once an aeroplane goes fast enough, the noise of breaking the sound barrier is at best annoying, but at worst causes damage on the ground. Hence why aircraft like the Concorde were banned from flying over land. But one company has devised a supersonic aircraft to minimize the sonic boom and be dubbed the Spike S512 Quiet Supersonic Jet. Hey, it's Nick here from Found and Explained. I have more videos just like this one on the channel, so if you enjoyed this one, click that subscribe button. Planes are slow, and apart from the Concorde, they reached a peak speed around 40 years ago, flying just under the speed of sound. This means that no matter what you pay, there is a cap to how fast you can go. Sure, there are showers and now beds on board the planes, but you don't get to your destination any faster. In steps Boston-based Spike Aerospace, a company with a dream to bring back supersonic travel. Well, kind of. They believed that while the Concorde was in the right direction, it was a tad bit too fast. They have developed a concept aircraft called the S512 Quiet Supersonic Jet, a plane that can go faster than a typical aircraft, but doesn't create the massive sonic boom that upsets so many. In fact, the sonic boom is projected to only be 75 decibels, round about the same noise as a vacuum cleaner. This is thanks to special materials, advanced engines, and the design of the aircraft's fuselage.
You got to be able to fly at a reasonable cost, and you got to be able to fly without making a sonic boom without disturbing people on the ground. It's a very loud, disturbing sound, and that's critical. And that's what Spike Aerospace has been developing a technology to cut that sonic boom down tremendously.
According to Spike, the aircraft would seat up to 18 passengers and fly at a speed of Mach 1.6 or 1.8 depending on your source. The aircraft itself will have a range of 6,200 nautical miles, which is around about 11,500 kilometers. An aircraft of this design will mean routine flights will take around about half the amount of time, cutting a flight from New York to London from 6 to 7 hours to just down to 3. And this is where the aircraft gets a bit stranger. On the inside, there won't be any windows apart from the cockpit. Instead, the Spike S512 will feature a windowless passenger cabin, which will eliminate structural issues involved with building the fuselage, and reduce the aircraft's overall weight. The smooth exterior skin of the aircraft will also reduce the drag caused by the windows. This windowless cabin will be replaced with super thin embedded high definition video screens, which will provide panoramic views taken with micro cameras installed on the aircraft exterior. Passengers will have the option of either dimming the screens to take in some sleep or switch over to the scenic images already stored in the system, avoiding the glaring sun and the use of shades. So I bet you're ready to buy and want to know when you can get your hands on this $100 million aircraft.
Shut up and take my money!
Well, since it was announced in 2014, there hasn't been much progress, and the delivery date keeps being pushed back, slipping along in time. We made a lot of progress in 2016 in engineering and with the addition of a number of engineers and partners. Our plans for 2017 are even more exciting as we continue development of the Spike S512 quiet supersonic jet. I'm looking forward to the first demo flight very soon, said Vic Kachoria, the president and CEO of Spike Aerospace. In 2017, the firm would go on to test a scale model of the aircraft. Not at supersonic speeds, just a sort of normal remote control aeroplane that was designed in the aircraft's shape. Then in 2018, the company announced that they were on track to build a prototype by early 2021 and start deliveries by 2023. Apparently in 2018, the company also began to study a stretch version of the plane to seat up to 40 to 50 passengers. This is possibly a project to rival the Boom Supersonic project, which we will talk about in another video. Sitting here in 2020, we look and... there doesn't seem to be any real update on the aircraft. All I have is that in 2020, there was suddenly a burst of activity on the company's blog, with Spike Aerospace hiring the former CEO of Virgin Australian Airlines, John Thomas, to help sell the aircraft to airlines. Spike Aerospace's vision for supersonic flight is tremendously compelling and ideally suited to all the major airlines. The Spike jet with low sonic boom, long range, and a seating capacity will work well in airline operations. I'm looking forward to helping build relationships with major customers around the globe. But hold on, I thought this aircraft was a business jet, and now they're hiring the ex-CEO of a bankrupt airline, correlation not causation, to sell the aircraft to a completely different market? The last word from Spike is that they believe that by the mid-2020s, airlines will be able to offer premium passengers 40% faster flights on the Spike supersonic jet for business or first class fares.
It takes time. It's tremendously exciting, and it's happening.
Whether or not we will see this quiet Concorde or if it's yet another paper project remains to be seen. Thanks so much for watching today. I have another video just like this one about the Virgin Galactic project that you can watch right here, as well as other videos about planes, trains, and much more. And if you like this video today, feel free to give it a subscribe and a thumbs up. And I can't wait to see you commenting on the next one. Thanks very much. The Concorde was going to change the way we fly, able to cross oceans in mere hours, beating all known methods of transport when it came to speed. It was the leapfrog that airlines couldn't afford to miss. But the Concorde actually had far more orders beyond the two carriers British Airways and Air France, who would eventually fly it. Who were these other airlines? Where would have they flown the plane? And why did these deliveries never happen? On a brisk winter morning in 1972, a supersonic flying machine touched down in Sydney, Australia. The Concorde and the future of aviation had arrived down under. Officials at Qantas lined up to place, at this point, a no-brainer order, for the jet was here to change aviation forever. So far, the plane had been ordered by both British Airways and Air France, whose parent countries had spent billions of dollars developing the airframe, 7 each for each airline. But apart from this, no other airline had yet converted its options into actual orders. The first option agreement that had been signed was with launch customer Pan Am, who optioned 6 Concorde aircraft in 1963 and then optioned another 2 in 1966. Pan Am would have used these just like Air France and BA to cross over to Europe over the ocean. Continental followed soon with an option for 3 Concordes, as well as TWA, who optioned 6. American Airlines also had options in North America for 6 aircraft, but seemingly only after rival Pan Am made the first move. Near the end of the first year of the Concorde on its sales run, Middle Eastern carrier MEA optioned 4 aircraft from France. They would operate this plane from Beirut to New York, landing in Toulouse to refuel, and a supersonic 2-hour trip to London. MEA's Concorde philosophy was summed up by the airline's leadership at the time. Getting the president of an American oil company to fly to New York in 8 hours instead of 14 is something to sell. Today, what do we offer for the 40% high first-class fare? A wider chair and free whiskey? To offer 8 hours instead of 14 makes it worth 40% more. That is how we see the Concorde. We hope and pray that it will work because it will be a great thing for MEA and for Lebanon. The next year in 1964, Qantas would option 4 aircraft. They would have used the plane for flights over the outback to Singapore, although many said that the range wouldn't quite work, but we'll get to that later. Following Qantas, we have Air India with 2 options and Japan Airlines with 3. Japan, being a country completely surrounded by water, would have been spoiled for choice when it came to choosing supersonic routes. Then, forcing their way to the Concorde order book on seemingly the same weekend, Eastern Airlines racked up 2 options which they would expand to 6, and was quickly followed by United the very next day with their own choice of 6 options for the Concorde. Braniff International would close out the year with options for 3 aircraft. During its tenure, Braniff would actually hire the Concorde to run a few promotional flights over 3 years from Washington to Dallas, operating the aircraft with its own crews. As the plane wasn't allowed to go supersonic in US airspace, the pilots were not trained in its faster operation. Imagine sitting behind the controls of one of the world's most powerful planes and not being able to throttle it up. Lufthansa would round out the major orders with 3 aircraft, followed by Sabena with 2 aircraft and Air Canada with 4 options. There was also an option for 3 aircraft from the Chinese government, which is dubious if it would have even gone ahead in 1972. The plane was planned to be used to fly VIPs and limited routes from Beijing. Now, this is seriously rumour territory, but some say that FedEx also looked at using the Concorde to transfer packages super quickly over oceans with a fleet of 10 aircraft. But the plane didn't have a cargo door and wouldn't have been able to rate it very far at all with a fuel cargo belly. Knowing the modern world's desire for same-day shipping, we wouldn't rule out how useful it would have been. The last aircraft that had options for the Concorde was Iran Air. The airline at the time was obsessed with having the very biggest and greatest aircraft, and having 2 supersonic jets plus a single option for another one was no issue at all for them. These orders were likely made because the Shah of Iran was close with France and wanted to maintain good relations. But it's also possible that he simply wanted them for his own ego. After all, we all know what happened a few short years later with the Iran Revolution. All we know about the aircraft with Iran Air that they would have been used for routes linking to Europe, and was actually hired for that purpose a few times when it actually operated. Tehran to North America would have been outside the range of this plane, and because Iran is pretty much landlocked within Asia, it would have been pretty hard to operate these international routes without cooperation from other countries. It seemed that the Concorde dream was in full swing, with 44 options across 10 airlines. But this was very much short of the 150 aircraft needed for the program to break even, but a good start nonetheless. These options would never be confirmed, and like a deck of cards, a slight nudge would make them all fall down. You see, these orders were only options, and some of them were vague as a promise from a friend to help you move house, as in not solid at all. In 1973, rising oil prices led the Concorde to become increasingly unprofitable, and the sonic boom became a political football no country wanted to be left holding. Besides, the plane itself was also growing far more expensive, its price tripling from the 20 million US it was first predicted to be to 60 million US, which is 349 million US dollars today. This led launch customer Pan Am to reconsider its options, and later that year outright cancel them. The carrier wasn't doing well at the time, and it wasn't able to secure financing to go forward with the orders even if it wanted to. The airline had been quoted a price of $46 million per Concorde as opposed to the cheaper $25 million per new 747 that carried 3 times as many passengers. With Pan Am losing faith in the program, other North American operators, American Airlines, Continental, United Airways, Air Canada, TWA, and Banff International would follow suit. TWA would cancel their options within minutes of Pan Am, very much leading to the idea that all these carriers were deep in discussion to abandon the supersonic dream together. Although Banff International would go on to use the Concorde many years later as a promotional tool as noted earlier. Sir George Edwards, chairman of the British Aircraft Corporation, along with France's equivalent, said, "We should not describe this as a fatal blow, but it's a hell of a setback." Without American rivals using the Concorde in the Pacific, Japan didn't really need the plane, and with Japan not ordering it, this led to China failing to make payments on its options and having its options cancelled by the 1980s. Other operators like MEA would let the options expire as they didn't want to be stuck with a somewhat experimental aircraft. These airlines also saw that if British Airways and Air France, who were guinea pigs in this situation, could make the Concorde profitable, then they could always reorder the aircraft. Plus, Boeing and others like Russia were working on their own version of the Concorde, dubbed the second generation supersonic jet, that would be cleaner, deal with the issues of sonic boom, and also have a much better performance. Planes that might have been bought for cheaper in the future. It seemed that being patient for these airlines was the best solution going forward. The last option order on this list is special because it was actually never cancelled. That's right, the Qantas order for 4 supersonic jets is still technically on the books, and Qantas could very well demand that successor Airbus build them these jets that they have on option. Although we know that this will actually never happen, Qantas would go on to order the Boeing 747 for its Pacific aspirations. The Concorde would then go on to serve a unique slice of the market through carrier British Airways and Air France. It would be rented by some of the carriers above for special routes now and again, like Singapore, who would even paint half of the plane in their livery for routes operating from their hub, as well as Pepsi, yes, the soft drink, who would use the plane as a promotional billboard. Its deep blue livery had to be specially certified as they were scared it would melt off during supersonic flight. But no airline would acquire the plane for themselves, and even attempts as recent as 2003 to get it. That's right, our list doesn't stop back in modern history. In 2003, Richard Branson tried to acquire the retiring Concorde jets from British Airways following the crash of Air France 4590 and the downturn of the aviation industry following 9/11. He reasoned that if the planes were being retired, why not take on the supersonic mantle and keep them flying, although in bright Virgin Atlantic colours. The billionaire first offered British Airways a single pound, or $1.53 US, for the planes, the equivalent he claimed British Airways had paid for the plane to acquire them in the first place. He also said that there was a special requirement in the British Airways privatisation agreement, written back in the 1980s, that said that if BA no longer wanted the Concorde, then another British airline should be allowed to operate the supersonic fleet, a clause that lawyers weren't able to find much later. When BA dismissed the offer, he then switched up to £1 million and eventually £5 million per aircraft. Still not what they were worth new, but if the planes were heading to a museum, many reasoned that it would be worthwhile. The planes would have remained on the New York to London route, a cornerstone for the Virgin Atlantic market. Although later, many critics did suggest that Sir Richard Branson would have struggled to maintain the planes, especially since the spare parts required to fly were discontinued by Airbus in that very year in 2003, one of the reasons why the pressure was on to retire the plane. Looking back at history, we can see that the Concorde would have had a very different future if only a few key players had remained. If Pan Am had kept its order and had been financially solvent, then North America would have been a key investor in the Concorde's success. Not to be left behind in the sonic boom wake, other carriers in North America would have at least followed on, and the Boeing 2707 would have come out of the workshop at any cost to stay competitive. If oil prices had not risen and Iran Air had kept its order, then we could have also seen the rest of Asia follow suit, and that mystery Qantas option for 4 planes fulfilled, leading to a world where you can get where you want to go fast. With smaller and faster jets, we might have seen the Boeing 747 regulated to simple cargo operations, and likely the Airbus A380 would have never have been built, appearing only on this channel as a crazy fever dream for a never-built project for all of us to captively watch. A strange, parallel future indeed. Today's video skipped over a few other reasons why the Concorde failed in the market, from countries using the sonic boom issue to leverage landing slots such as India and Malaysia, leading to the demise of the flight model, as well as the high-profile crash of the Russian supersonic Concorde equivalent, the Tu-144, which we'll cover in another video. But thanks so much for making it this far and learning that the Concorde really was about to become a huge success, only for a very few interesting twists of history. If you want to check out more about this program, then we have a great website called foundandexplained.com, which has plenty of more info. And if you want to support the channel, then we have a fantastic Patreon that you can watch videos early and decide on future topics. Again, if you like the video, let me know down in the comments what you think, and subscribe for more. Thanks so much for watching.
Virgin Galactic rocked the aviation world yesterday with news that they were entering the supersonic race with their own incredible Mark III supersonic jet. How fast does it go, and when will we fly on it? Watch to find out. If you're new to the channel, I do a range of other cool videos, so check them out and subscribe. Virgin Galactic, a brand of Sir Richard Branson famous for its low Earth orbit rocket ship, has decided to throw in its hat into the aviation marketplace, specifically with a supersonic jet capable of flying at Mach 3. This is a big deal because it's roughly double the speed of the Concorde. The company has only finished a mission concept review with NASA, but is confident to move forward to further development. Speaking to the press, Chief Space Officer George Whitesides at Virgin Galactic said, "We are excited to complete the mission concept review and unveil this initial design concept of a high-speed aircraft, which we envision as blending safe and reliable commercial travel with an unrivaled customer experience. We are pleased to collaborate with the innovative team at Rolls-Royce as we strive to develop sustainable, cutting-edge propulsion systems for an aircraft, and we are pleased to be working with the FAA to ensure that our designs make a practical impact from the start. We have made great progress so far, and we look forward to opening up a new frontier in high-speed travel." And high-speed travel is something that should be sought after. While you can pay to fly an incredible luxury, you cannot arrive at your destination any faster than someone sitting in the back of the plane. This will change everything. Let's discuss what it will be like on board this new Virgin Galactic aircraft. According to the airframe maker, the cabin will seat 9 to 19 passengers depending on how much luxury the aircraft is fitted with. There will be enough room for 9 lie-flat beds, or the equivalent of a Singapore Airbus A380 first-class cabin in the low-density configuration, or 19 seats if the operator wants to fly it in a high-density configuration. Before you lambast the designers for not including lie-flat seats on board the high-density configuration, remember that passengers on board won't need to sleep when they fly to their destination at Mach 3. And what do we mean by Mach 3? Well, Mach 3 is the equivalent of 3,700 kilometers per hour, or 2,300 miles per hour. In real terms, if you are flying from London from New York, which is 5,500 kilometers or 3,500 miles, it would take approximately 7 hours and 50 minutes on a standard subsonic aircraft, 2 hours and 52 minutes is the record time of the Concorde, or Virgin Galactic's new offering can fly that distance in 1 hour and 30 minutes. This is twice the speed of the Concorde. Once you understand how fast this aircraft is, it becomes no contest for anything else on the market. While researching for this video, this author also tested some other destinations with staggering eye-water results. Sydney to Melbourne in 11 minutes and 33 seconds. Sydney to London in 4 hours, 35 minutes and 5 seconds. Los Angeles to New York in 1 hour and 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Los Angeles to San Francisco in 9 minutes and 3 seconds. London to Paris in 5 minutes and 35 seconds. London to Dubai in 44 minutes and 19 seconds. Tokyo to Los Angeles in 2 hours, 22 minutes and 37 seconds. And lastly, Tokyo to sunny Honolulu in 1 hour, 40 minutes and 20 seconds. There are plenty of issues with the above numbers, such as takeoff and landings, range, and sonic boom restrictions, but it does give you a great perspective. The aircraft will be flying so fast that it will need to fly at 60,000 feet to avoid other aircraft. but the team at Virgin Galactic planned to have it land at normal airports and use the same infrastructure, such as airport gates. From here, Virgin Galactic will progress to the next phase of design, consisting of defining specific system architectures and configurations and determining which materials to use in the design and manufacturing of the aircraft. The team will also work to address key challenges in thermal management, maintenance, noise, emissions, and economics that routine high-speed commercial flights would entail. Just like the battle between the Concorde, the Tu-144, and the Boeing 2707, could we be entering the next supersonic race? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to check out my other content and subscribe. Have a great day. In this video, we will look at a supersonic jet that doesn't go very fast, but perhaps that's the key factor that will make this impossible project successful. This is the Arion supersonic business jet. Hey, it's me, Nick here. Subscribe if you like to see more videos all about things future, aviation, and never built. Okay, onto the video. Arion Supersonic, a Reno, Nevada-based aviation firm, is tackling the supersonic puzzle differently from competitors Boom, Spike, and Virgin Galactic. Supersonic flight has one massive drawback: supersonic booms. If Arion can create an aircraft that doesn't have a rolling wall of sound trailing it, then perhaps they can avoid falling under the noise bands and their aircraft can be permitted to fly over land, a huge roadblock that has prevented supersonic commercial aircraft for decades. Arion has claimed that it has developed boomless cruise capabilities that could see it flying at Mach 1.2 or so under certain conditions without massive pressure wave of sonic boom ever reaching the ground. An impressive feat if true. The Arion SBJ keys enabling technology, supersonic natural laminar flow, has been conclusively demonstrated in transonic wind tunnel tests and in supersonic flight tests conducted in conjunction with NASA. The road to bringing this concept to market has been long for the company, with Arion completely redesigning the concept almost from scratch halfway through development. The first version of the Arion supersonic business jet was introduced in 2011 for $1.4 billion development, anticipating a 250 to 300 aircraft civil market over the next 10 years. It had two engines that would push 8 to 12 passengers up to Mach 1.3 and up to 4,000 nautical miles, perfect for transatlantic journeys. The concept was a big winner, with Arion securing 50 deposits with letters of intent, with each aircraft costing $80 million apiece. But during the development of the project, they ran into several massive design changes. Arion increased the aircraft's takeoff weight and the length to accommodate and meet customer expectations, and increased the number of jet engines from 2 to 3 to meet new noise guidelines. This new version, capable of a maximum speed of Mach 1.6, has been designed to travel at two optimal cruising speeds where range and efficiency are at their best. Mach 0.95 where supersonic flight is prohibited, and at Mach 1.4 where the wing characteristics will be at their most efficient. This new aircraft will be able to carry up to 12 passengers to a range of 4,200 nautical miles at its top speed, or 5,400 nautical miles when flying at Mach 0.95 at a height of 57,000 feet. This will mean that the aircraft will be perfect for trips across the Atlantic as well as throughout Southeast Asia, one of the primary markets of the type. For those wondering how this aircraft will tackle the fuel problem, the AS-2 is the first supersonic jet designed to be powered 100% by synthetic fuel, with the firm partnering up with a provider to tackle the incredible issue of fuel burn. According to Arion, they forecast a market for up to 300 AS2s over the next 10 years and 500 overall at a price of $120 million each. A faster Mach 1.6 version of this aircraft with a larger cabin, longer range could also follow as a business jet or even a small airliner, but will need new engines to go above the speed of Mach 1.8. To keep the boom as quiet as possible, Arion would incorporate tech from the NASA Low Boom Flight Demonstrator program, although they're not going to use it in the current version at the moment. Arion has been partnering up with various different aerospace firms to try and build this aircraft, with the likes of Bombardier being interested in 2004, then Airbus, and followed by Lockheed Martin. Airbus pulled out, and then the deal with Lockheed expired in 2019. On February the 5th of this year, Boeing stepped in with its announcement to invest in Arion and will provide engineering, manufacturing, and flight test resources to introduce the AS2, maintaining a 2023 date for a first flight. Boeing gained 2 seats on Arion's 5-person board, while the amount of its investment was undisclosed. Although Arion is still sticking to the story that it is investing $4 billion into the project, and none of its partners will have to invest. A private aviation firm, FlexJet, confirmed that they had actually placed an order valued at $2.4 billion for 20 Arion AS2s back in 2015. This delivery was set at 2025. FlexJet CEO Ken Rickey said that the company would use the supersonic jets for overseas flights and also in China, which does not have restrictions on sonic booms. These jets would be sold like timeshares to customers in the club who would be able to use it for a certain amount of flights per year and share the costs. Production will ramp up from 12 in 2026 to 23 in 2027 and should stabilize at 36 aircraft per year from 2028, although they have not ruled out increasing it up to 4 per month. The main production plant will be built in Florida near Cape Canaveral Space Center to take advantage of the engineering talent in the area. The most recent update for this video is in September, when the production team moved to France for wind tunnel testing. Let's hope that this time Arion is able to get the AS2 project out the door before overhauling the design yet again. Now for my personal thoughts on this project. Arion has become a bit of a darling in the business and the aviation industry, with its more simple dream of a quicker jet than other business jets on the market, without it being so fast as to cause too many problems with the sonic boom. The only problem is, in this industry, it's all about speed, and if Arion's aircraft is not faster than its competition, and it doesn't make it to the market before them, like Boom Supersonic, who is showing off their prototype on October 9th, so tune in for that, then they might find that these 50 orders for the AS2 will evaporate into thin air. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate all the new viewers and subscribers who have come with me on this Found and Explained journey. And I'm trying my best to produce the best quality videos I can for you here every week. So let me know down in the comments what you think of today's video, and if you want to hang around to see more, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching!
Supersonic is here.
Boom Supersonic is building the closest thing we have to the next Concorde. In this video, I'm going to show you the XB-1 test aircraft and how this small Denver firm is bringing back supersonic flight. So strap in and power up your afterburners. Hey, it's me, Nick here, the voice on this video. If you enjoy what you see, subscribe for more videos. And if you like what you hear, leave a comment about my voice below. Previously, we have touched base on 3 other potential supersonic projects: the Virgin Supersonic plane, the Arion AS2, and the Spike S512. However, these 3 aircraft are nothing more than CG mock-ups and don't actually exist beyond a computer screen. The Boom XB-1 is different. Currently under development and set to fly test flights next year, the XB-1 is a third-size demonstrator trijet that is effectively the first private civil supersonic aircraft ever built without government funding. The firm revealed the prototype aircraft today into the sun for the first time and showcased its technical progress to the world. An excellent step for this aircraft. So let's break down what this plane is. The XB-1, or otherwise known as the Baby Boom, it is not designed for passenger use, with only enough room on board for test pilots. It's 68 feet long, which is 21 meters, with a wingspan of 17 feet, or 5 meters. So it's very small compared to many other supersonic jet projects. It's powered by 3 General Electric J8515 turbojets that provide 4,300 pounds of thrust each. This will allow the aircraft to fly up to Mach 2.2 faster than the Concorde, although thanks to its small size and limited fuel capacity, it only has a range of 1,000 nautical miles, or 1,900 kilometers. To combat the impressive air friction heat that will spill into the aircraft's cabin, the fuel on board itself is ingeniously used as the heat sink for the pilots. From here, Boom Supersonic will perform checks and ensure that the electronics, fuel and other systems are working as designed. Alas, flight tests won't begin until 2021 and supersonic flight testing until well into the next year. As supersonic flight requires a supersonic trained pilot, Boom is working with the US military to test the airframe at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Future Nick here, did anyone else notice that Edwards Air Force Base has a golf course right in the middle of the desert? Military dollars at work. This base is well known as the test bed for today's premier aerospace technology programs, including the Global Hawk hypersonic flight and the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The company has not ruled out that the XB-1 will be available as a purchase for rich enthusiasts, but likely the aircraft will need to undergo plenty of testing and pass certification before it could become commercially available. What certification that may be is yet kind of unknown, as the US government hasn't made it abundantly clear what type of structure needs to be in place for civil supersonic aircraft. But this aircraft's real purpose is only proof of a concept for a much bigger, grander vision, and adeptly named the Boom Overture. This bigger aircraft will be the ultimate next generation Concorde, at 170 feet long, 52 meters, with a wingspan of 60 feet. It will have a seat capacity for 55 business class passengers in a narrow 1-1 configuration. Each passenger will have 75 inches of legroom, which is typical of a business class seat today. It will have 3 engines just like the smaller plane at the back, providing around 20,000 pounds of thrust each, which will definitely put the Boom in Boom Overture. Flying at a speed of Mach 2.2, this plane will have a total range of around 4,500 nautical miles, or 8,300 kilometers. And it won't be a fuel-guzzling jet like the Concorde was either. One of the principal reasons that the Concorde wasn't affordable was that it just consumed too much fuel. Fast forward 50 years, and none of those things need to be true anymore thanks to advanced engine designs. According to Boom Supersonic, this opens up around 500 new daily routes across the water that would be perfect for this aircraft. Highlights include New York to London in 3 hours and 15 minutes. It could also do Miami to Santiago in about 3 hours and 4 minutes, although it won't be able to fly supersonic the whole way, having to slow down over Central America and perhaps skirting around the coast of Peru. Alas, it does run into some problems when it comes to tackling the Pacific Ocean, as the range isn't long enough without a refueling stop. However, routes with a stopover in Hawaii could open up a flight time between Tokyo and San Francisco in only 5 hours and 30 minutes. Or for Australian viewers, Sydney to Los Angeles will only take 6 hours and 45 minutes of direct flight time. The firm has also said that they could put in 30 lie-flat bed seats on board for these longer flights, with a few business class seats. Currently, Boom Supersonic is targeting around $5,000 for a New York to London round trip, and that's both ways, not one way like the Virgin Galactic Supersonic jet, which we talked about in another video. And this price is actually a quarter of the price of the original Concorde of $20,000.
A future in which you can get anywhere on the planet in 4 hours for just $100.
And unlike many other projects on this channel, the Boom Supersonic Overture is getting some serious airline attention. By the 2017 Paris Air Show, the company has 51 commitments for 76 aircraft. 5 major airlines have placed orders, with Japan Airlines confirmed to have pre-booked up to 20 of the first jets to a tune of $10 million. At $200 million per unit, Boom predicts that they may have up to 2,000 aircraft over the course of the generation, a $400 billion market. And at only $6 billion to design, build, and bring the concept to market, this could really be the next gold rush. The aircraft is also earmarked for a possible Air Force One supersonic jet by the US Air Force, but we'll cover that in another video very soon, so subscribe to be sure not to miss it. There are a few roadblocks on the way for this engineering marvel. For one, they need to get the XB-1 flying high and proven before they even begin to find money for the bigger Boom Overture. And then they only plan to make 6 Overtures by around 2027, testing the planes over 2 years and using them to acquire more customers. But you bet that I'll be one of the first in line to buy a ticket on board this marvelous machine. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my other videos on supersonic aircraft, or the crazy Boeing Sonic Cruiser that almost got built. Subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching.